She's been called the spawn of Satan, among other things. Meet a teacher who's changing America. Welcome to another episode of Conversations. This is the show where we talk about anything and everything. Today's show, I will be interviewing Rebecca Frederichs. Rebecca is a former teacher who has taken America by storm when it comes to education, and she's going to be here today to talk about her battle with the teachers union that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. So Rebecca, welcome to Conversations with Dr. Carol Swain. Would you tell our audience how a nice girl like you don't look like the spawn of Satan to me, how you got involved with those nasty teachers union people that are actually destroying American education?
They're not only destroying American education, they're destroying America, our free republic. And how did I get involved with them? Well, I became a teacher in 1988. And when I signed my first contract, I was handed a union paper and told I had to sign that too. And I said, no, thank you. I don't want to join your union. And they told me if I wanted to teach, I had to pay. So what I discovered was I didn't have to technically join and become a member, and I didn't have to pay dues, but I had to accept their representation and I had to pay their fees. And the difference between dues and fees at that time was about $50 a year. So I was paying several $100s to belong to an organization that stood 100% against everything I believe, all of my virtue. They stand against my religious beliefs. I'm a Christian. They stand against that. And they were damaging the children that I love. And the reason I knew they were damaging them was when I was a student teacher. I had this amazing master teacher who taught me everything I know. She just, the little first graders in her class would leave the year reading above grade level, loving school. I mean, she was an excellent teacher. But next door to us was a woman who every single day I would witness her grabbing kids, screaming at them, yanking them into line, especially little boys. She picked on them a lot. And, they came up to her waist. I was terrified of her at 22 years old. They were 6 years old. So I asked my master teacher, I'm learning about reporting child abuse and I see some, and it's the teacher next door. What do I do? And she sat me down that day and said, today is the day you learn about teachers unions. And she taught me that the district couldn't get rid of this lady. And it didn't matter how abusive she was, the union was defending her. So you're right that they're nasty. They're destroying our schools and damaging our children, dividing everyone and damaging parents. And so that's how I got into this battle. I couldn't shut my eyes and allow evil to reign and damage children when I knew the reason it was going on and I could speak out about it.
Well, I know that you were instrumental in a case that has your name on it that made its way to the Supreme Court. How did the escalation between you're 22, you're told, okay, this is the way it is, yet somehow it escalated to the point that you have your name on a Supreme Court case?
Yeah, it sure did. So throughout my entire career, the unions would come into our mandatory staff meetings, and we were just forced to listen to all of their propaganda. They stood against school choice. I was for school choice. They stood against everything I believed. And so what happened was about halfway into my career, I thought, you know what? I'm forced to pay these people anyway. I'm going to become a full member and I'm going to step up and get involved. And I'm going to help change this from the inside, because none of my teacher friends agreed with the evil things that were going on. And they felt manipulated and terrified, by the way, of these unions. So I became a union leader and I served for 3 years on the executive board of my local union. I was the secretary, and I started attending statewide conferences. And that's where I saw the extreme corruption. That's where I learned that the state and national teachers unions are 100% political animals. They are pushing a far left communist agenda onto our country using our schools as their propaganda indoctrination centers. And when I saw this and witnessed the abuse that they were abusing myself and other teachers who were at these statewide conferences who dared to speak out and say, hey, wait a minute, we're uncomfortable with you spending our money on all this politics. So when I saw all of that, and then what the straw that broke the camel's back was during the downturn in the economy during the Obama administration, I was told as a union leader that we were going to have to lay off several amazing teachers. They had brought up our writing scores. The students loved them. We had been able to bring class sizes down to a nice number. I worked in a district, low income, Title I district, 42 languages on my campus. These kids needed support. And all of a sudden, all these great teachers were going to be laid off. So I went to our district administration and I said, hey, if we take a pay cut, just a 3% pay cut, could we save these jobs? And they said, yes. So as a union leader, I did my due diligence. I went around, talked to teachers. They all wanted to take the pay cut to save these jobs and keep class sizes down, but the union said no. And so I kept nagging the union and nagging them. Finally, after about 6 months of nagging, they said, Rebecca, don't worry about those teachers. The union's going to take care of them. We're going to give them a seminar on how to get unemployment benefits.
Oh my goodness.
My jaw hit the ground because these teachers were paying $1,000 a year in representation, dues, and this union represented every one of them right out of a job. They all lost their jobs.
Horrible.
It is horrible. Class sizes went up and everyone suffered. Our morale was so low from that. We were all willing to take that small pay cut. No, the union got its way and everyone got hurt.
Well, I can tell you, Rebecca, that here in Nashville, every election year we hear about teachers' pay, and how the need to increase it. And even if they get an increase, the money goes to administration. It never reaches the teachers. And so the teachers are being used in the same way that blacks and Hispanics and racial and ethnic minorities, they are a constituency group that they talk about, but at the end of the day, they really don't care about improving their lives. They just care about using them.
You are precisely right about that. Here's the way the unions think and what they do. Let's say that you want to push something that people aren't going to want to accept. What do? You find the most innocent, loving face and you get behind that face. So the unions infiltrated the teacher associations in the 1800s.
Uh-huh.
And they said, we're teachers, we're unions, we're wonderful, we're here for the kids. No, they're not. They're communists. They're pushing an agenda, and you are right. They're using teachers to do it. And you know what else? They've also gotten behind the face of the PTA. They have undermined and bullied the PTA into a stance of neutrality.
Right.
So the PTA only does whatever the teachers union want. And you know what? I think if we could find a way to stop calling them teachers unions, because they're neither one. They're not teachers. They're not genuine, legitimate unions. They're communists. So we should probably start calling them what they are.
Well, you are absolutely right. And the strategy of going into organizations, infiltrating, deceiving, manipulating, they've used that to radically restructure American society. We're going to take a break. And when we return, I want to talk more about, the case and how it was decided. And then you're going to get an opportunity to talk about your movement for kids and country and just all the great things that you're doing for our nation. And
sounds wonderful.
We'll be back after a word from our sponsor.
Conversations with Dr. Carol Swain is made possible by Cooper Steel, a family-owned business that provides the steel fabrications for some of the greatest buildings across the United States. 60 years ago, Kenneth and Faye Cooper founded their company in Shelbyville, Tennessee.
Cooper Steel believes in sponsoring Carol Swain because we believe as she does, you build strong, you stand strong.
What started as a vision and now a nationally recognized and operated company that remains true to its founders' Judeo-Christian values and principles. Cooper Steel is committed to excellence, responsibility, and community. Cooper Steel's motto is, build strong, stand strong. They treat their employees and customers like family. Thank you to Cooper Steel for standing strong with Conversations with Dr. Carol Swain. Learn more about our generous sponsor at coopersteel.com.
Now, Rebecca, that case that made its way to the Supreme Court, could you tell our viewers, what happened and then how that the case, which you were pushing, has impacted America?
Sure, I'd love to. Well, 10 teachers from California were brave enough to stand up together and sue the California Teachers Association, the National Education Association, and all of our local unions. We also sued our superintendents. That was nothing personal, but it was because superintendents are allowing the unions to collect their dues through mandatory paycheck deductions, which means the American people, the taxpayers, are paying for collection of union dues, handing them over to the unions who collect these dues tax-free and then spend them all on politics.
That's right.
So we objected. To that. So the goal of our case was threefold. We wanted to end forced unionism in the United States of America for every government employee in the country, which means no one would have to pay fees anymore. They could, just have right to work without having to pay these unions. The second thing, we wanted to stop the paycheck deductions. And the third thing was, when you get a job in a government job that's unionized, which almost all of them are, you are automatically put into that union. And you have to figure out how to opt out of it if you get some freedom. Well, we argued people should have to opt in. They should choose to join these unions. The unions had all the control and all the power, so we were trying to lessen that power. So we brought our case, and it was heard at the U.S. Supreme Court in January of 2016. And Justice Scalia was our swing vote. He was the one we knew we had to convince, because his record voting for and against unions was, it was kind of even. So
Right.
We didn't know which way he was going to go. We all knew the day of oral arguments that Justice Scalia landed on our side. Even the New York Times admitted that we were likely going to win the case with a 5-4 decision. Well, tragically, 1 month after our case was heard, Justice Scalia was found dead. And what's interesting is, during the case, the most common question people asked me was, "Are you afraid for your life?" That's how terrified people are of unions. Their second question to me was, "Are you afraid for your job?" And after Justice Scalia's death, very sadly, the most common question people ask me to this day is, "Do you think the unions killed him?" So that just shows you how people don't trust these unions and how terrified they are of them. So Scalia died, and very sadly, we ended up with a 4-4 tie decision. We requested a rehearing, and the justices considered that. But at the end of the term, on my birthday, they said, "We're sorry, we're not going to rehear your case." But very gratefully and happily, there had been another case that built itself on ours. Nobody thought we could win this case. But when our case was picked up by the Supreme Court, all these attorneys around the country went, "Wait a minute, they might win." So other cases were built behind our case. Thank God, Janus, another case that came behind our case, went forward after President Trump won, and there was another conservative placed on the bench. And the Janus case won on my birthday in June of 2018. So ever since that day, all government employees, teachers, VA nurses, DMV employees, people that work at the post office, cops, firefighters, people at the CDC, everyone who's in a government union no longer has to pay them. And so now our big, huge effort is to get that message out there, because the unions don't want anyone to know that they've been freed. Yep. And during my case, the unions pushed something called the Friedrichs fix, where they went around into legislatures that they control.
No wonder you're the spawn of Satan.
You got it. So if they control all Democrat-run legislatures are controlled by the teachers' unions. So they went in and they were able to pass all kinds of legislation that makes it illegal for school districts or others to tell teachers or other government employees their rights.
That's horrible.
It is horrible. They put all the unions put all the they just have all the advantages, right? And so now people don't know they're free. So we still have, I don't know the current number, but probably about 85% of government employees are still paying these unions, and they don't have to. And if they're Christians or people of faith, these unions are 100% attacking their faith. If you love freedom, if you love our constitutional free republic, your union is attacking it and trying to turn us into a socialist communist nightmare. So if you're paying a union right now, you're paying toward that, and you're free. You don't have to do it anymore.
Well, Rebecca, a couple of things is, if we as conservatives, and I include, the Republicans, the ones that are not Republican in name only, if we were doing our jobs, what we should be doing, people would know, because we would be educating the American population. We're not doing that. So that's one thing I want to say. And then when it came to Scalia's death, I'm sorry, I'm on the camp. You can call me conspiracy theorist, call me what you want to call me, but the circumstances of his death and how it was handled was so suspicious. And when we look at the Obama FBI, CIA, DOJ, all of those agencies have proven themselves to be corrupt. And if you look at WikiLeaks and some of the emails that went back and forth around that death, there's every reason to be suspicious. And so we may never know the true story, but I'm on the side of those that, feel that. In fact, there was a book, and I'm not going to remember the name of the book, that had to do with killing conservative Supreme Court justices. And I actually started doing research. I was going to do an opinion piece about it, and strange things started happening to my computer. And when I was trying to go into the documents, the government documents, so much had been redacted, and I backed away from it. I felt like I needed to back away from it, not out of fear, but I didn't think it was the time for me to touch that. But Scalia's death, I think the timing of it, that was just so suspicious. And so, regardless of that, we know God is good. You had bad news on one birthday, and then the following year, you get what you wanted all along.
That's right. And I'm so glad you shared all of that, because those of us who are working hard and getting educated on all of the issues, we recognize that things aren't right. America used to be based on liberty and justice for all. And very sadly, because all of those three-letter agencies that you named, including the CDC and others, they're so corrupt, and they've been corrupted by these government unions. And so that corruption has undermined liberty, and it has completely undermined justice. We're seeing today where good, honest people are being harassed, thrown in jail. Look at General Flynn. There's a gentleman, David Daleiden, who exposed Planned Parenthood and the horrible things they're doing. He's being harassed. He might go to prison for exposing evil. But then these very corrupt and truly evil people continue to get away with what they're doing. So we have to fight to restore justice and to restore liberty in this country, to restore our constitutional republic. So I'm so grateful to you for speaking out. And you're right that we all as conservatives, we all as freedom-loving Americans, no matter what side we land on, need to be educating people on the truth about these corrupt, evil unions, and that they no longer need to pay them. And also, a lot of people still think these unions are their friends because they get them a raise or they get them Cadillac benefits. Beware.
Right.
Beware. People need to be very careful. Don't let greed get you caught up in sticking with an organization that is corrupt and actually undermining you and harming you and your family and our educational system in our country. So if it's our job to awaken people and to lovingly speak to them one-on-one and help them to understand that they've been deceived, and to help them to break free.
And another thing, Rebecca, is that a lot of people are afraid that they're going to be called a name. And so if you're white, you don't speak up about critical race theory and discrimination against your children because you might be called a racist. Well, you're going to be called a racist anyway. And with Scalia's death, there were lots of people that thought it was above suspicion, all of these things that happened, but they didn't want to be called a, quote, conspiracy theorist. My theory is that when they call you a conspiracy theorist, it's because you're getting too close to the truth. And we need to not allow ourselves to be silenced. We're going to take another break. And when we return, I want you to really dig in on giving the audience advice and talking about, for kids and country, the movement that you sparked.
Dr. Carol Swain's Be the People, a call to reclaim America's faith and promise, newly released in paperback and audio with a new introduction, is a challenge to all Americans. If you are serious about being the best citizen you can be, this is the book for you. From addressing moral relativism to reclaiming the future, you'll understand why Dr. Swain is one of the most relevant voices in today's culture war. Are you ready to reclaim America's faith and promise? Purchase at bethepeoplenews.com/books or wherever books are sold.
The Biden administration's executive order on immigration brings to the forefront one of the most volatile issues of our time. In this timely second edition of Debating Immigration, I join my voice to that of other experts to provide you with facts and information that will help you understand what is at stake for our nation. This edition offers 21 original essays that cover race, religion, economics, human smuggling, and civil rights.
Purchase at bethepeoplenews.com/books or wherever books are sold.
Hi, Rebecca. What I want to talk about now is the movement that you sparked for kids and country. And we're in our last segment. Time really flies, and so we also would need you to get your recommendations out as well. But for kids and country, tell us more about that.
Well, after teaching 28 years and bringing that case to the U.S. Supreme Court, my eyes were more opened about the corruption and the desperate need for parents, teachers, community members, faith leaders to come back together again, because the union divided us all. They use divide and conquer, and they use it well. So the first thing I did was I wrote a book, and it's called Standing Up to Goliath: Battling State and National Teachers Unions for the Heart and Soul of Our Kids and Country. So in that book, I tell the testimonies of about 48 different brave teachers from around the country. We expose the unions for all kinds of stuff. We expose that they harmed the PTA. We expose that they worked with the Obama administration to bring in these new racial equity discipline policies that are destroying our schools, turning them into war zones. We expose them for the radical sex ed they've brought in. It's not sex ed, it's sexualization of our children, and it's dangerous. And so we're basically exposing that the unions need to be removed from our schools, and that so many teachers have tried to do what's right, and we've been brutalized for it and silenced. Just like you were saying earlier, people who see the truth and start to speak out about it, they get silenced and they're called names and everything else. Well, we decided we're not going to let that stop us. We're going to march forward. So I left the classroom. I miss my students so much, it hurts. But I knew that if I stayed in the classroom, they'd continue being hurt. Someone had to get out and advocate for them.
That's right.
So we started For Kids and Country. It's a national nonprofit, and our goal is to be a national messaging campaign just to get the message out to all government employees, especially teachers and parents, that look, you don't have to fund unions anymore. They're liars. They've divided you. Don't fall for the propaganda, and to bring folks back together again. And it's our hope that people will start stepping up in their communities, because our schools were never supposed to be run by the government. They were supposed to be run by communities, by parents and good teachers, not activists doing union politics. So that's our goal. It's just to educate, to bring people together, and to empower teachers to get out of the unions.
Well, I mean, you're doing a great work, and it is impacting the whole country. And there are other organizations too that have started as a result of your activities. I've heard of one called No Left Turn that really focuses on some of the things that's taking place in the classroom. I would like for you to say something about the critical race theory and how through diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's impacting education.
It's destroying education and our country. So people need to understand that critical race theory is just the latest Marxist propaganda. So what the Marxists/communists do is they always bring in divisive rhetoric. They divide us by color, by class. They divide us by religion. They divide us in any way they possibly can. So the latest thing they're doing is critical race theory. Basically, there's victims and there's I forget the terms they use, but dividing us. You're a victim, the other person's picking on you, instead of our American value of everyone can achieve. Everyone's created in God's image. Everyone's equal. They can all get out there and grow and create a business, whatever they want. But instead, this critical race theory comes in and it says, you're white, you're a bigot, and you can't help it. You'll always be a bigot, and you have privilege that people of color don't. Well, that's a lie. That is a lie from the pit of hell.
Well, too.
It's not. Go ahead.
Well, the other thing that the message that they send to all minorities, no matter their background, is that you're a victim, and that white people, they have a property interest in their whiteness, and they have to liberate you. You're oppressed because of white people. And it creates, white guilt and also shaming of people because of the color of their skin and their ancestry. And I think in many cases, it creates a hostile learning as well as working environment that runs counter to our civil rights laws and the Equal Protection Clause.
Very well said. And if people can just look back into history and see, these things have happened before. Think about the way the Jews were treated in Nazi Germany. And it wasn't exactly like critical race theory, but, we have to get rid of them because the Aryan race is better. It's the same lie. And, what they're trying to do is divide. And America is united.
Yes.
We're a great country because we're united on particular virtues and beliefs, on a constitution and a Bill of Rights. And they're trying to divide all of that. It's very dangerous. And very sadly, the unions that we're fighting are the ones bringing that into our schools. It is an emergency that we get them out. I always tell people, the schoolhouse is on fire. The children and teachers are inside. We need to rescue them and put out the fire. And we do that by taking the unions out. Imagine if we could remove these unions from every three-letter agency,
Would that
from
be nice?
every institution. We would be back to being a constitutional free republic overnight.
Rebecca, thank you so much for spending your time with us. And I'd like for you to give your website addresses, and I think we will put that up as well, and tell people where they can find your book.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. It's been lovely being here. Our website is forkidsandcountry.org. My book is on the website. You can't buy it there, but you click on it and it'll take you to a link. You can get it pretty much anywhere books are sold, Barnes & Noble online, Amazon online, and it's in audio, print, Kindle, Nook, all those different forms. And again, our website is forkidsandcountry.org.
Thank you. We'll be back.
For those of you who would like to know what exactly our children are facing in their education system, this is a must-read book. It will equip you and prepare you to make decisions about your child's health, about your child's education. So I want to encourage every one of you to grab a copy of Dr. Swain's book and join with me and Carol on the front lines in this critical time to eradicate the liberal abduction of our children.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this important show that has covered so much about teachers' education and the crisis that our public schools are in. And so be sure to go to Rebecca Frederichs' website, purchase her book, donate to her nonprofit for Kids and Country, and together we will reclaim American education for all of our children. We have to fight together. We have to be bold. We have to be brave. We have to be like Rebecca. And we're not doing it for ourselves, we're doing it for our children. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.